And the first session that we'll be going into here is a panel session that looks at sustainability, looks at that future. How do we work to be more sustainable, take out carbon and adapt what we do? And then following that, we've got some really interesting sessions looking at our future, but I think our future's here. They're all looking at AI, applications, risk management. So yeah, I think we're in for a good session before lunch. So I'm going to be chairing the whole of this session, but first I've got the pleasure of chairing the panel, and my panel members are all there ready to go. So what we're going to be looking at on the panel is sustainable by design, materials choices for climate-ready councils. So, thank you, panel. I wonder if you could introduce yourselves, perhaps starting with you, Megan, who you are, why you're here.
So, morning, guys. My name is Megan Thompson. I am Technical Product Support Manager for Tarmac, cover primarily the north of the business, but I've been kind of rolling out our Sevo Asphalt brand that we've just launched, and that's looking at a combination of technologies and how we can all work more sustainably together.
I'm Mark Macdonald, Highway Service Manager at Milton Keynes City Council, and we're looking at not just the use of asphalts that we've got today, but what's the future going to be in the climate. So what materials do we need now to make those materials sustainable for 20 years' time?
Hi, I'm Brendon, Colarossi. I'm Principal Engineer for Hartlepool Borough Council. I'm here to represent the local authorities. We do a fair bit of innovation with our tarmacking, so I'm the voice of reason. Ish.
Hi, I'm David Giles. I'm the chair of the Asphalt Industry Alliance, and I'm here today to put a bit of context behind the discussion, because we do a survey called the Alarm Survey every year, which many of you contribute to, which tells us the condition of your local roads and also about the amount of money that's spent on them and the amount of money you receive.
Thank you. So we'll dive straight into the questions, I think. So having sort of spent yesterday and this morning here, I've seen that there's a myriad of materials out there, and all low carbon for structural maintenance, proactive maintenance, or your reactive maintenance. So if we've got so many suppliers and manufacturers here that have those low carbon materials. So if the materials are out there, why have we got the panel? Why do we need to discuss this if the materials are there? Perhaps if I could go to Mark and then Brendon first.
Mm-hmm. Mark, then Brendon first. That means it's me or you? So,
highway engineers are quite traditional. They don't like change necessarily. A number of us are of a generation where we were burned a little bit in the 1990s with stone mastic asphalts that didn't seem to have the longevity. So why are we here? Well, we need to be changing what we do, evolution, not revolution, looking at where we can use lower carbon materials, we should, and it's that change. So one of the things we need to do is let's prove that these materials have got the long shelf life that we need, show us the accelerated aging test results, and change the mindset. So my structural maintenance engineer is 70 years old, and he's like, no, I'm going to use hot rolled in chips. So it's changing that mindset of people. We've all declared climate emergencies, but I'm not sure if we're going to get there quickly enough. So from the Milton Keynes point of view, we've got a lot of high-speed grid roads where hot rolled asphalt with chip-ins is probably the right material. Currently, we can't do that in a much of a lower carbon way because you do need that temperature to put the chip-ins into hot rolled asphalt. But where we can, on all of the estate roads, we're just doing a little bit. We're going down with warm mix asphalts, and we're just trying to reduce our carbon footprint a bit.
Yeah, I would agree. There's a lot of products out there, but I think knowledge is key. There's a lot of stuff out there, and there's a lot of us sort of semi-doing our own thing. So there's various parts of the country using different things, different techniques. So things like L-Crick, that's brilliant because that knowledge is going to get shared. There is lots of wins as far as what we're doing. So we've just done the scheme, we've saved 84% carbon, which, if I'm being honest, you can't do every day. But we've proved you could with the technology we had. And that's probably where we are with that, I think.
So
But,
touching on the Hartlepool and the Stockton work we did, so 84% reduction on carbon. It's not business as usual, but at Tarmac we've got that capability, improving technologies, new material innovation coming through that does allow us to get them numbers. Yeah. But we can't get there without everyone in this room, without the tier one contractors coming on board, without the industry moving. And I'm quite privileged. I've come into the industry at a stage where that change was starting to happen. This journey to sustainability, although it's a larger talking point now, it's not new. We've been on this journey with wrap and warm mix for a number of years now. I think the key bit is that willingness to try, and the way we're kind of working at a Tarmac, we can create the materials, we can give you the paved technology, we can look at different solutions, but we want to know what your problem is within your authority. Do you have an issue with cracking? Do you have an issue with rutting? What are the kind of pain points that you are feeling every day? Come to us with them. We'll then develop that solution to work alongside you, because the last thing we want to do is to be relaying them roads every few years. It's not sustainable. We want, as Mark's touched on, something that's going to be ready for 20 years' time as the climate is changing. Come to us with the challenge. We're here, we're ready to take that on board.
David.
Well, I come at this from a very different angle. I'm looking at the result of what these good people are doing. And in the alarm survey, in the last alarm survey, we had a section called the Path to Net Zero. And that was done in collaboration, by the way, with L-Crick, and very much an idea from L-Crick to ask some questions which gave a indication of how local authorities were dealing with this change. And what we got back from that survey was 87% of local authorities have declared a climate emergency, so no surprise there. However, only 22% have updated their asset management plan to include net zero principles. And then when you look at quantifiable targets, only 6% have quantifiable targets to reduce their carbon footprint. So what I'm reflecting and what you're telling us in the alarm survey is there's lots of choices out there, but there isn't the policy and there isn't the process behind adopting those materials yet. So great to see the initiatives that you're talking about. However, that's the story that we're seeing in the alarm survey.
Thank you. So thinking about those local authority net zero commitments and those low statistics of those authorities that are tracking or have targets, is there something we need to do across the sector? Is there something we could do ourselves? Do we need to mandate carbon reduction targets for local highways authorities? Do you think that would be a lever that could help us move towards being more sustainable?
Are you?
Yes, David.
Sorry, yeah. Apologies. Not only am I slightly deaf, I can't see very well either. So obviously our role is to really shine a light on the real issues. The AIA was set up, and for 25 years we've been reporting data provided to us, and we anonymise that from local authorities. And what we have seen, apart from this huge backlog that there is in terms of maintenance, we do see through the discussions we have with people in the local authorities, the focus groups, there is a massive willingness for change. But mandating that change is the issue. So I do think that there needs to be some form of target set at a higher level. However, I would say, how can this be done without the money to provide for it? And that's my biggest concern, is we seem to rob Peter to pay Paul on many, many occasions. And so, along with there being some mandating, I feel there needs to be the resources put in to support these initiatives.
Perhaps, Brendon, from your perspective, local highway authority, do you think mandating of a target could help and support you?
Yeah, it would come help a long way. I mean, we are starting to see it within the funding agreements that we Tees Valley, they are starting to ask questions about sustainable materials, which we never ever used to get. So, largely because I keep prodding them and saying, why you're not going for using like decent materials and stuff we can actually do something. Because the more people we can get in, the cheaper the costs become, which again goes back to your point, is it makes it a little bit more manageable.
Yeah.
I think we have to be careful what we mandate, because at the moment we can probably use lower carbon materials that are lower in construction phase, but not necessarily lower in their whole life phase, because if something's going to last 12 years and I've got to resurface it, another product that's a higher construction phase carbon, but it'll last 22 years, that whole life carbon needs to be taken into account. So we're also looking at everything we use now is polymer modified bitumens, because we're getting road surface temperatures of over 60 degrees. And the softening point of traditional 50 pen, 40-60 bitumen is 60 degrees. So it tends to cause more rutting on those low speed and approaches to roundabouts. So we're looking at not just the carbon element at the moment, but the sustainability of those materials, their resistance to being flooded. So we don't have all the answers, but what's the climate going to be like in 20 years? How many more of my roads are going to be subject to a lot of flooding? But I don't think mandating it is necessarily the answer. You can mandate it, but you've got to have some flexibility that you don't just go down the line of you'll reduce your carbon at construction phase by 30%, because that isn't the answer. It's a bit like in the 1990s, everybody starts using SMA, but we still mandated a 1.5 mil texture depth. So that material didn't work. So we've got to be very careful if we mandate it. Yeah. We need to reduce our carbon, but it's how we do that. And I think the answers come from us, from industry, from the tier one suppliers and the supply chain.
Yeah, thank you, Mark.
But these are, it's like variation on that one. You may not get quite as long life, but then it's how we approach it. There's the rejuvenation products that are out there now with some of the supplies today. So do we think we might get not quite as long, but then we can rejuvenate to get the overall distance?
It's about that life cycle planning as part of good asset management strategy.
Yeah, you're right with that. It's obviously for pavement works, it's a key part of everything that local authority does, and let's face it, it's one of the things that the general public, every single day there's a different complaint comes into you and looking at. It's that sustainability through durability piece that is key as well. So one of the biggest kind of resistance to change we get is around the cost and the budget and, well, how much is this product going to cost me now? But actually we've got the agent tests, we've got the data to prove that you will get that additional life cycle out of the road. And some of the products we've got are up to 20% additional life cycle. So it's looking at that carbon reduction at build, but also whole life carbon reduction and cost at build versus whole life cost. And it's a balancing act, and it's something that we do need to come together as industry and kind of agree some key metrics on, what them metrics look like. I believe it'll be forums like this that give us them answers. And the conversation, it needs to be that we don't all walk away from here today and go, yeah, I had a really good couple of days there, but I'm just going to go and continue doing what I've done. Kind of rise to the challenge with it, and that's there to have.
Thank you. So perhaps some sort of target that we can then track to, that could be a lever to help us build those programs of those alternative materials that may well get us those economies of scale that might bring the price down.
And
it could be that those targets
are at a local authority level. I'm not necessarily advocating that someone like the DFT has to come along and mandate a carbon reduction target. But what I told you was that only 6% of local authorities have a quantifiable target. So the first step in any journey is your plan.
Yeah.
And it's great to hear that people are using PMBs and are using novel materials in their journey to reducing carbon and thinking about whole life cost. But ultimately, if you don't have a target, how do you know you're actually going to get to the journey?
Yeah, you don't know where you're going or how close you are to getting there. You mentioned, David, when you talked about targets, the perhaps another lever, something else that will help. You talked about funding. Now, we all know local authority funding is really restricted, be that capital or your revenue. It doesn't matter where the money comes from. We've said for years there's not enough of it. Is that a key lever to unlocking us being more sustainable at scale, or is it a lever that you feel is locked? We can't do anything about that.
Well, I'm an eternal optimist. You have to be in this job. Because the reality is that every local authority has a backlog of maintenance and yet have all sorts of pulls upon their strings and purse strings, including seeing, so we're told, money not always ending up on the pavement. It might end up in other departments even. So we've called consistently for ring-fenced funding, which normally gets me a slap from politicians who don't like the concept. And the other thing we call for is that there is a longer term view on funding. I think that's coming. It's obviously part of the dialogue now, which is great news. But we really need to let the condition of the road speak to the amount of money that is needed. You cannot have a risk-based funding process. It just is a spiral to the bottom, in my opinion.
Thank you. Megan, what would additional funding help Tarmac do for local authorities?
Yeah, so with the CEVO and the bio asphalts in particular, obviously it's something that we're bringing into market. We've got a key kind of network of strategic plants that are going to do it, purely due to the bitumen tanks we've got at the units, due to the kind of capability of them plants. But as more funding comes through and this does become more business as usual, obviously it helps with that investment piece on our asphalt plants to change the capabilities of what we can do. And through that, it then does also work on that price point at end sale. At the moment, as we're doing these jobs, they are a change at the unit. We're having to take bitumen out of a tank to put it in, or we're having to increase the wrap contents and blends within the designs. The more local authorities and the more contractors who are willing to work on this change, it's that scalability piece will help with the overall economical piece and support on cost for everyone.
So perhaps, Brendon and Mark, from your perspective in the local authority, what would help you in either directing the funding you get in different ways or additional funding? What might be the levers that would work for you?
We need a longer term settlement. We need to know what the funding's going to be. I don't think the block funding has been announced as yet. Obviously we've got the additional funding this year. I'm not certain we've got it next year. So we're planning, and I suppose for a lot of authorities, you get the money and you know you've got it coming. So you look at, right, okay, I need the resource. But I'm going to be doing a lot of works in the winter this year, which is slightly less than ideal, depending on the materials you're using, because if you're doing night work and it's -1, you might not be able to use those really low carbon materials because the conditions aren't ideal. So it's all about that funding. Now, most local authorities don't just rely on money from the DFT in their roads. Most of them do put money in themselves. So it's about that continuity of budget and making sure that if the DFT are providing more funding, the funding we would normally put in doesn't get swallowed up by other departments. We're trying, we're not quite there yet, but we're trying to have a 5-year plan so we know what roads we're going to do in 2030. Now that's quite fluid, but you need that plan. But to have a plan of what roads you're going to resurface, or what roads you're going to do preventative treatments on, which are lower carbon as well, you need that security of funding. It's no good me going, I'm going to spend £8 million a year on resurfacing and surface treatment if all of a sudden I've only got 4 million, because it just messes all your plans up. So the message from me for the DFT is, let us know what our funding is going to be, not just, next year, but for the term of the Parliament at least.
I think just before I let you come in, Brendon, I mean, DFT have been working very hard to get that longer-term sustainable funding from the capital side that they provide for highway maintenance, etc. But I think, Brendon, I suppose the thought in my head is there something internally for local authorities need to change to enable best use of that funding? When I was in local authority, we were constantly, it was a one-year budget, effectively.
Yeah.
So, yeah, perhaps you could give your view on that.
I totally agree with that. I think we have to look at ourselves of how we deliver it. In Hartlepool, I'll go back 15 years before I actually took over the resurfacing. Standard policy, our DSO took 10% of the pot before they started to manage it. And then halfway through the year, because it was the easiest pot to rob to balance something else, all the works ceased. So basically, your £1 million in real terms was probably about 500,000. And that still does happen in certain authorities now. We have a slightly different plan on ours, as we have a term contract with Tarmac, and the way we've got it set up, I can run a overhead to 2%. Because we've got that collaboration, we work together. I don't have to go to those contracts. I can basically, a drawn square area, it goes to the contracts manager at Tarmac, and I say, I'm happy if you plan to fit it in. As long as I get done within this financial year, I've got that flexibility, and it works both ways. So we'll do a block of 6 weeks, say, blitz quite a large area, but it fits their timings and my timings. So like, say, if I need to miss times in front of schools or whatever, we can build that in, but it's that collaboration you do need to be cost effective.
Yeah.
And I'm not funding other people to come in and do jobs that realistically we can do ourselves. So I think we do need to look at ourselves and how we do deliver things. But any more money is always good.
Okay. So, explored the funding side of things. It's something you touched on, Mark, very early on, was the mindset. And I think in the alarm survey, it highlighted that there were concerns over service levels and in-service lives of some of these new, what are seen as new materials. So what do you think would help us get over some of the reticence for change, some of the reticence to move forward with engineers and specifiers?
I think part of the problem isn't just that some of our highway maintenance, our structural sort of resurfacing managers are of an age. Sometimes the messages don't come out from the supply chain. So if you're not working directly with one of the large aggregate and bituminous material suppliers, then your supply chain, they don't always give you the information about the materials and the art of the possible. What can they do? Because they're quite happy, they've got their own carbon targets, but sometimes it's easier just to use traditional hot mixes. It's easier for the gangs quite often. If you're starting to get a little bit of cold weather and you've only got a smaller finite window with warm mix. So we don't always get the information. So it's getting that information out there, but getting all of the testing, all of the knowledge that Tarmac and other suppliers have built up over years. So I previously worked in a central laboratory for a bituminous manufacturer. So I know all about the NAT testing, the accelerated age testing, lots of things that, these things aren't coming out to people like me. It's not being sold by the sort of second-tier suppliers as much as it should be. So it's a two-pronged approach. Get the supply chain involved. They've got their carbon targets they need to hit, and it's written into probably a lot of term service contracts, certainly is in ours. They need to reduce their carbon, but we also need to get that evidence out there to the engineers who are going to be using these products. And lots of those engineers won't be here. They're too busy, you know, resurfacing roads. So it's getting that to them. And part of that, Elkrig is a great vehicle. And I remember I took a load of new people to an Elkrig event Sean Rooney put on at the football stadium in Oxford. And I took my new Assistant Director of Highways, Transport and Waste there. And she was like, wow, there's so much goes on in highways. Didn't realise it was this complicated. But I think we need to get some of the training down to some of the lower level people. So we've got people in the room, assistant directors, heads of service, but we need to educate down our chains as well.
Yeah, perhaps, yeah, we're coming towards the end. So I think some real sort of key points have come out. There's funding, targets, knowing where you're going, where you want to get to is absolutely key to what we need to do, because then we can probably, we can do it at scale. I think the messaging, making sure that people know what's out there and making that an easy access, and that may well be something that Kerry can pick up with the knowledge portal, the knowledge bank from Elkrig. But yeah, so just final points from you all. I'd like to know, what are you going to do to disrupt the status quo, where we are, where we find ourselves? What are you going to do, and what do you need to help you do that? Perhaps if I go to you, Megan.
Yeah, so I think for me, and touching on the point around that education piece and stuff, we've come out of a period since COVID where we've kind of gone back into business. Things have took a little bit of a while to ramp up. So we used to do stuff like the Walk to Road days, bring people into our sites, and it did slow off a little bit. My message is the doors are open. Contact us. Come and challenge us. Come into the sites. Ask us the questions. We're here to support with it. On a personal level, it's this part of the role and the sustainability side is a huge part for me. I want to leave the planet in a better state than it is now. I want to be able to know that our future generations in the room will have a planet to live on, and you've just got to look at some of the numbers around World Overshoot Day and the data that comes through. It's really scary how fast it's changed over the last 10 to 15 years. We don't have 10 to 15 years to change this now. We have a matter of 2 to 3 to really push this through into industry and make it business as usual. Is it a challenge? Is it uphill? Yeah, it is. But there's an appetite. Everyone in this room here today wouldn't be here if there wasn't an appetite for it. So it's take it, open the doors that have been presented and come with that challenge.
Thanks, Megan. Mark, one-liner. What are you going to take away and disrupt change?
One of my colleagues on a previous webinar said, resurfacing is our last resort. It's not what we want to do. We want to be doing preventative treatments. And there's a lot of mileage in that. If we don't resurface, we're not heating asphalts up to 180 degrees. So the first thing is, look at your whole asset strategy and don't resurface if you don't have to. If you do, use lower carbon materials where it's possible. I think it's a really exciting time. I went to a plant a few weeks ago and they were telling me about the new plants they're building that are going to be hydrogen powered. They're going to end up putting 80 to 90% recycled asphalt products in. So I think the asphalt industry is really exciting, but we just need to take that change on board and go with it.
Thank you. Brendon.
Yeah. Well, I think we've put our money where our mouth is. We've committed our entire budget this year to low carbon. Again, we've got to help the industry help us. It's all said and done.
Yeah. And last word to you, David.
We'll continue to shine the lights with the input from all the local authorities on the woeful funding that's occurring for our local authority roads, and we won't be embarrassed about doing it, but we will promise that it will be anonymous and we will keep campaigning on your behalf. Finally, 13th of November, Sharing Best Practice, which is the Asphalt Industry Alliance online conference, which is focusing on new materials again this year. Please have a look at that and come and join the conference if you would like to hear more about exactly the type of materials that Meg has been talking about. And thank you for the invitation today.
Well, thank you. So, yeah, if we could just thank our panel, Megan Thompson, David Giles, Brendon Colarossi and Mark Macdonald.